All right, let's move on to the next section, if we could, please. And I'm going to call this section different types of taxes, right? So instead of, I'm not going to question the book chapter namers, um, but that's what's going to work for me. Um, and look, the taxes are built into the Constitution in more than one place. Historically, there wasn't an income tax until 1913. But there have always been different kinds of taxes, excise taxes, sin taxes. In fact, during the Prohibition, they lost so much money from sin tax um, that they had to try and start raising income tax dramatically after that moment. Um, but one of the things we're gonna let's talk about our modern tax system. Okay, um, the largest portion of taxes that gets taken out of your paycheck and really gets collected in general is individual income tax at the federal level. Some states, including ours, have an income tax as well, but the largest portion still is individual income tax at the federal level. Here's a basic outline of how that works. Everyone's first $10,000 gets taxed at about 10%, and then this range 15. If you make in here, this is where I land, 25. Remember, my first 37 are still here, or my first 10 is still here, and finally, if you get above the 413,000, you get taxed at 39.6, and it's different for married couples. There are also tax loopholes and write-offs. There are ways to avoid paying all your taxes. Businesses have tons of these loopholes and write-offs for the individual. There's things like charity data, money you give to charities, state and local taxes that you pay, property tax, state income tax, although that was capped under President Trump. Interest on your mortgage. There's a lot of different taxes there that ways that you can pay less in taxes, write off, tax loopholes. But as I said, corporations have a lot more than individuals. Heck, Amazon hasn't paid taxes in years, and they're the most profitable company in the history of the world because they have tax write-offs. My buddy Asa has a business in health insurance for your employees is a tax write-off. Investment in your biggest business is a tax write-off, and that's a big one. That's how a lot of companies pay little taxes that they I'm building a new warehouse and that cost me $1 billion. So I'm writing $1 billion off my taxes and so forth. I don't exactly know how Amazon does it, but understand that these businesses have lobbyists who work to make them pay as little as possible. Our last president, Trump, was a businessman, and there are all sorts of real estate write-offs and depreciation and stuff I just don't understand that kept many real estate agents, not just him, from paying equal amount of taxes. Speaking of corporate taxes, corporate tax is a big one. Although it's been going down in the last few decades, last year I believe that corporate taxes, in 2013, corporate taxes were at about 108 billion. They've gone down since then. There used to be more corporate taxes paid than individual income tax, and then since then it's kind of shifted more income tax than corporate tax, in part because they have lobbyists who work to lower their tax burden, and we individuals don't have as good lobbyists apparently that work to lower our tax burden. I wish we did. There's also sales tax, which everyone pays on everything you buy. And then there are things like property tax. There's Social Security. Property tax is if you own property. So homeowners, people with more money, are going to pay this tax where renters are not. So this is a tax that disproportionately affects people with more money. There is Social Security tax, which is taken out of everyone's paycheck. This is actually an example of it's called a regressive tax, which we're going to get to in a second, where people only pay Social Security for their first $150,000 of income, meaning that someone who makes 150,000 bucks pays the exact same amount as someone who made 100 million bucks last year, because after 150, there's nothing paid into it. There's a billionaire named Warren Buffett who says it's not fair that I'm paying less percentage of taxes than my secretary because of this regressive tax. Medicare, Medicaid is also another tax that's taken out. We'll talk about sin taxes. There's excise taxes, which are just confusing and don't make up a large percentage. And I want to break it down here into the different types of taxes, right? I skipped over the section, the ability to pay, because, yeah, look, if you don't make a lot of money, the government taxes you less. It makes sense. You can barely afford to eat and take care of yourself or maybe a family, and someone who's 10, 20 millionaire, billionaire, whatever, these people have more money than they know what to do with. They're going to get taxed at a higher rate, or in theory. Now, of course, because of these tax loopholes and write-offs, oftentimes it doesn't work that way. I just mentioned Buffett pays a lower percentage than the secretary. Famously in 2012, when Obama ran against Mitt Romney, Mitt Romney's a crazy rich guy. He married like the Heinz ketchup woman. He's worth like 200 mil. And he pays most of his money on investments. Now, when you make money from an investment, that's called capital gains tax. And that is taxed at 20%. It was 15% back then. It's less than money you make from working. So people who don't work, right, and make all their money from investments, whether it be because they married rich or their parents, or maybe they just invested well, or they worked hard and they put their money away and now they're investing it. But they're still making that money. I made $20 million last year on investments. I'm going to get taxed at a lower rate than the guy who worked hard to make 20 million, right? I don't know, LeBron James, hedge fund manager. Capital gains tax is another tax on investments. And there's a lot of people who say that it should be the same as all earnings should be taxed the same, not investment. Rich people are the people who make money on investments. They get taxed at a lower percentage. Famously, Mitt Romney got taxed. He made 30 mil that year, like 2011 or whatever. Most presidential candidates release their taxes. I know our last president didn't, but he's a unique guy. He paid 13% on his 30 million he earned that year. Obama, who was making the presidential salary, which is fine, plenty of cash. I think Michelle had some extra money. I think he made 800,000, okay, that year. He got taxed at 19%, which still isn't at that highest level of the 39%, but of course, write-offs and loopholes, home ownership, and your second home, and your this, and there's a yacht write-off. There's all sorts of ridiculous write-offs, or I think are ridiculous. But I'm not a rich guy. If I had a yacht, I might not think it's ridiculous. That exists. So these are all different types of taxes. They get you. There's a death tax. They get you, everywhere. When you die, you get every penny that you have over, I think, 4 million or something gets taxed at a certain percentage. I don't know what it is. Some people call it the estate tax. Some call it the death tax. And this really hits hard on someone like, Warren Buffett, who's worth $100 billion. He was an older guy, or the Koch brothers and this types, when they die, like, what's going to happen to their money? Do they get to pass it all on? Or is it going to be part of it taxed and given back to the country, to the community? So we talk about 3 different types of taxes here, and I had just mentioned them, and I'll kind of put them in their categories. Proportional tax is one where everyone gets taxed the same. This is your sales tax. This is your Medicare, Medicaid, 2%, no matter what, of your paycheck. Sales tax is 7.5% in California, 2% in LA, 10% total. I get hit when I go to the store. Everyone gets taxed the same. It's called proportional tax. Then there's called a progressive tax, where the higher income you make, and this is individual income tax at the federal and state level of California, by the way, is considered a progressive tax. The higher you make, the higher percentage they take out of your paycheck. Although we say that there's loopholes and there's write-offs that kind of oftentimes balance it out, and maybe capital gains tax. Make it so the super rich don't pay this percentage, and we saw Romney paid less than Obama, but they both made over the 400,000. Okay, that's trickery. And some people should say that there shouldn't be all these write-offs and loopholes and ways to trick the system. That it should be less, more just like simple. You know, if you make the money, you pay the tax. If you don't, you don't. No one should, Amazon, the richest company in the world ever, should never pay 0% when they made 100 billion. And then there's a regressive tax, and this is Social Security, right? This is the one where the more you make, the less you pay, the less percentage you pay. And when we talk about taxes, we don't talk about dollars. We talk about percentages of income, percentages of earnings. Because of course, the guy who makes $1 million is going to pay more dollars in taxes than the guy who makes 10,000. But what percentage are they paying, right? And that's the real question when we talk taxes. So hopefully I was able to describe a lot of the actual taxes that we pay as Americans, and some of the principles behind why we pay what we pay. And then, of course, the different categories of progressive, regressive, and proportional. The rich pay more, the poor pay more, or everyone pays the exact same percentage. I don't know. What's the right call? What's the right answer on which tax style is the best? And again, what do you think? Vote for the person who agrees with you next time. Unless money's not your main issue, unless you're voting on social issues, which is great too. Vote however you want, just vote.